I want you to listen carefully, not with your ears alone, but with that quiet awareness behind your thoughts, because what I am about to remind you of is not new information. It is something you have always known. Before there was a universe, before there were stars burning in distant galaxies, before there was space or time or any sense of separation, there was only infinite consciousness, not a being in the sky, not a distant ruler, but boundless awareness without edge or boundary. This infinite awareness did not sit in darkness. It was not lonely. It was not incomplete. It simply was pure presence, pure potential, pure knowing without object. And I want you to understand that this infinite awareness is not separate from you. It is what you truly are beneath every identity you have ever worn. At some point, not in time as you understand it, but in a movement of intention within infinity itself, this boundless awareness desired to experience itself, not because it lacked anything, but because expression is the nature of consciousness, and in that desire to know itself, it focused. That focus became what many traditions call love, the primal creative impulse. Love is not emotion here. It is the organizing principle of existence. And when love moved, light emerged. Light is consciousness made visible, intelligence in motion, infinite awareness expressing form. Everything that exists is made of that light. Galaxies, oceans, mountains, your body, your thoughts, your memories. Light slowed down, patterned, shaped by assumption. Even modern physics whispers this truth to you. Matter is energy. Energy is vibration. What appears solid is a dance of fields interacting at astonishing speed. When you touch a wall, you are not touching something truly solid. You are encountering organized light, responding to your sensory interpretation. The world is not a fixed object independent of you. It is a field of intelligent energy responding to consciousness. And here is where I want you to pay attention, because this is where the story becomes personal. That infinite intelligence did not fragment into pieces that lost connection. It expressed itself as perspectives. You are one of those perspectives. You are not a fragment cut off from God. You are God viewing itself from a particular angle. The sense of being a separate individual is part of the design, but it is not the ultimate truth. Beneath your name, beneath your history, beneath your body, there is the simple awareness that says, I am. That awareness is the same awareness that exists everywhere. You may believe that you were born at a certain time and that one day you will die. But birth and death are movements within form, not within consciousness itself. The awareness that knows your thoughts has never been born and will never die. It is the same infinite field that brought forth galaxies. The only difference is that it is currently focused through the lens of your identity. Imagine sunlight passing through a stained glass window. The colors appear different, yet the light is one. You are a pattern in the glass, but the light shining through you is infinite. Why then do you not remember this fully? Why does life feel limited, uncertain, sometimes painful? Because infinite consciousness chose to experience limitation. It chose to enter what you might call a veil, a state of forgetfulness. If you fully remembered that you are the infinite creator, there would be no exploration, no discovery, no growth. Everything would be instantly known. So the One agreed to forget itself in order to rediscover itself. And you are that rediscovery in motion. You were not thrown into a random universe. You entered a field of light with the capacity to shape it through assumption. Your imagination is not a trivial mental activity. It is the creative faculty of the infinite within you. Before any event appears in your outer world, it has already been accepted inwardly as possible or true. The infinite responds to identity, not to wishful thinking. It organizes light according to the state you occupy. If you assume yourself small, the light condenses into experiences that confirm smallness. If you assume yourself powerful, the light reorganizes accordingly. This is not reward or punishment. It is resonance. The infinite mirrors itself through you. I want you to feel the magnitude of this. The source of all existence is not outside you. It is expressing as you. The intelligence that holds planets in orbit is the same intelligence that beats your heart without your command. The creative power that shapes galaxies is the same power shaping your circumstances through your deeply held assumptions. You are not asking the universe for permission. You are participating in its formation every moment. When you say, "I am tired," "I am afraid," "I am unworthy," you are attaching qualities to the infinite I am within you, and the light, obedient and neutral, organizes around that declaration. When you say, "I am loved," "I am capable," "I am guided," the same infinite substance responds. The power has never been absent. Only awareness of it has fluctuated. So I am not teaching you how to become divine. I am reminding you that you have never been anything else. Intelligent infinity is not a concept to worship. It is the living awareness reading these words through your eyes. It is the silent witness behind every experience you have ever had. And when you begin to identify not with the temporary role but with the infinite awareness behind it, everything changes. Fear begins to loosen. Limitation begins to soften, because you realize you are not trying to survive in a hostile universe. You are infinite consciousness exploring its own creative depth. This is the origin of all things. Not matter, not chance, not separation, but intelligent infinity choosing to express itself as light, as worlds, as lives, as you. And the moment you accept this not merely as philosophy but as identity, you begin to live differently. You stop pleading with reality and start shaping it through the quiet certainty of who you are. Now tell me, do you want me to continue to the next part? Now I want you to go deeper with me. Because once you begin to sense that infinite consciousness is the source of all things, the next realization will transform the way you see the world around you. Everything you call physical, everything you believe is solid and external, is made of light, not poetic light, not symbolic light, but actual intelligent energy. Light is the first expression of infinite awareness. It is the building block of universes. It is the substance from which stars are born, and it is the substance from which your body is formed. When infinite consciousness focused itself through love, light emerged as the visible vibration of that focus, and that light did not disappear after creating galaxies. It became the galaxies. It became the atoms. It became you. You have been trained to think of matter as something heavy and fixed. You believe the chair you sit on is solid, that the ground beneath your feet is stable, that your body is dense and separate from everything else. But modern physics has already revealed what mystics have known for ages. Matter is energy slowed down. At the atomic level, what appears solid is mostly space, and what you call particles are patterns of vibrating energy. These vibrations are organized, light. When two objects appear to touch, they are not actually colliding as solid blocks. They are interacting fields of energy, electromagnetic forces responding to one another. Solidity is an interpretation created by your senses. The underlying reality is movement, vibration, light. I want you to feel what this means. If everything is light, then everything is responsive. Light is not dead substance. It is intelligent. It carries information. It organizes according to pattern. And what determines pattern? Consciousness. The infinite does not create once and then step away. It continuously expresses itself through the vibration of light, and your awareness, your assumptions, your deeply held beliefs influence the arrangement of that light in your personal field of experience. You are not trapped inside a rigid world. You are moving within a field of responsive energy. Your body itself is light arranged in a specific pattern. Every cell, every organ, every heartbeat is an orchestration of vibration. When you feel emotion, your body shifts chemically and electrically. When you hold a persistent belief, neural pathways strengthen, hormones change, posture adjusts, light reorganizes. The so-called physical world is not separate from your inner state. It reflects it through the medium of vibration. Consider the equation that science reveres. E = mc squared. Energy and mass are interchangeable. Matter is condensed energy. Energy is intensified. Light. This is not a metaphor. It is the foundation of physical law. The universe is not built from solid bricks but from light structured by frequency. And frequency is influenced by consciousness. When you understand this, you stop seeing yourself as a powerless observer. You begin to see yourself as a participant in the shaping of light. I am not telling you that you consciously decide every event in a simplistic way. I am telling you that your state of being sets the tone of your energetic field. Light organizes itself around coherence. When you dwell in fear, your nervous system vibrates differently. Your perception narrows. You interpret neutral events as threats. You make decisions from contraction. The light around you aligns with that state. When you dwell in love, gratitude, confidence, your physiology changes. Your perception expands. You recognize opportunities where before you saw obstacles. The light reorganizes accordingly. The external shift follows the internal adjustment. You may ask, if everything is light, why does change sometimes feel slow? Because light is patterned by repeated assumption. A single fleeting thought has little power, but a sustained state, accepted as true, becomes dominant. Imagine light as clay that responds to the pressure of belief. The more consistently you press in one direction, the more defined the shape becomes. Your life is the sculpture of your sustained vibration. There is another layer to understand. Light is not separate fragments scattered randomly. It is a unified field. What appears as distance is simply variation in perspective. The same light forming your body forms the stars. The same energy animating your thoughts animates the planet beneath you. You are not isolated in a sealed container. You are immersed in a continuous ocean of vibration. Every thought you think ripples through that ocean. Every feeling modifies the field. You do not need to force reality to respond. It is already responding. When you begin to truly grasp that light is the substance of everything, fear begins to dissolve. How can you be fundamentally separate from anything if you are made of the same essence? How can you be powerless in a world composed of the very substance that responds to consciousness? You are not a small being fighting against matter. You are light interacting with light. You are consciousness shaping vibration from within. This does not mean you ignore the appearance of solidity. It means you see through it. You recognize that what seems fixed is actually dynamic. You understand that change is not a violation of nature. It is the nature of light. You stop worshipping limitation as permanent. You begin to ask, what state am I holding that is organizing this arrangement of light? And when you shift that state, patiently and persistently, the pattern must shift. Light is the brick of the universe, but it is also the canvas. It waits for instruction, and instruction is given through identity. Whatever you accept as true about yourself becomes encoded in vibration. The infinite light responds faithfully, not because it favors you or opposes you, but because it is you. There is no external force withholding. There is only alignment or misalignment between your conscious assumption and the deeper truth of your being. So when you look at your hands, do not see flesh alone. See structured light. When you look at the sky, do not see distance alone. See the same substance that forms your thoughts. The universe is not outside of you in the way you were taught. It is a field of intelligent light within which you move, and through which you create by the state you embody. Now tell me, do you want me to continue to the next part? Now I want you to look at the world around you and question the one assumption you have never dared to question. The assumption that matter is truly solid. You trust the floor beneath your feet because it feels firm. You trust the walls because they resist your touch. You trust your body because it appears dense and defined. But I am telling you that what you call solidity is not an ultimate truth. It is a perceptual translation of speed, vibration, and energetic interaction. What appears solid is light moving so rapidly and so consistently that your senses interpret continuity where there is actually motion. At the atomic level, there are no solid blocks pressed tightly together. There are fields, patterns, probabilities, and vast spaces that your perception compresses into a single impression of density. If an atom were magnified to the size of a cathedral, the nucleus would be tiny at the center and the rest would be almost entirely empty space. Yet your body made of these atoms feels compact and tangible. The reason is vibration. Energy oscillating at extraordinary frequency produces stability of form, and stability of form produces the illusion of solidity. Imagine a wheel spinning slowly. You can see the spokes clearly. Increase the speed and the spokes blur. Increase it further, and the wheel becomes a continuous circle. The faster it moves, the more solid it appears. Matter is vibration accelerated to such a degree that it convinces you of permanence. When you press your hand against a table, you believe you are touching something solid. Yet what truly occurs is the interaction of electromagnetic fields. Energy, repelling energy. Light, responding to light. There is no true contact in the way you imagine. There is organized vibration, meeting, organized vibration. Your nervous system translates that interaction into pressure, into resistance, into solidity. But the underlying reality is motion, not mass. I want you to understand the consequence of this realization. If matter is vibration, and vibration can shift, then what you experience as fixed is actually a stabilized pattern within a spectrum of possible patterns. Stability does not mean immutability. It means coherence sustained by repetition. Your body is not the same body you had years ago. Cells have died and regenerated. Molecules have exchanged constantly. Yet you experience continuity because consciousness maintains the pattern. Identity feels solid for the same reason matter feels solid. Repetition of vibration creates the impression of permanence. The world you move through is not a rigid prison. It is a stabilized, energetic agreement. Collective consciousness sustains large-scale patterns. Personal consciousness sustains individual experience. When you accept a belief deeply and consistently, your nervous system organizes around it. Your perception filters through it. Your behavior aligns with it. And the light in your field arranges accordingly. You may believe that the external world causes your inner state, that events create your emotions. But consider that your inner vibration influences how events are perceived and interpreted. Two people stand in the same room and experience entirely different realities because their internal frequencies differ. The outer structure may be similar, yet the lived experience diverges. Solidity exists in perception, but interpretation defines its meaning. When you begin to see that what feels immovable is actually vibration sustained by assumption, you loosen your attachment to limitation. You stop declaring your circumstances permanent. You stop identifying yourself with current form. You begin to ask what state of consciousness is stabilizing this pattern. Because vibration follows identity. If you hold fear as your dominant state, your physiology reflects it. Your posture shifts. Your tone changes. Your decisions narrow. And the light reorganizes into experiences consistent with contraction. If you hold confidence and clarity, your system aligns differently. Your perception expands. Opportunities that were invisible become visible. And the field responds. This is not superstition. It is energetic coherence. You are not manipulating matter. You are influencing vibration through sustained state. The appearance of solidity is necessary for meaningful experience. If the world were obviously fluid, you would not take your choices seriously. The illusion of density gives gravity to decision, but behind the appearance, the substance remains, light in motion. You are interacting with speed, not stone. You are navigating frequency, not fixed mass. When you encounter something in your life that feels immovable, do not assume it is eternally solid. Ask what belief has been vibrating long enough to stabilize it. Ask what identity you have accepted that sustains that frequency. Then gently shift your state, not with strain, not with force, but with steady awareness. Because once you understand that solidity is vibration perceived through limited senses, you stop being intimidated by form. You remember that you are consciousness within light, and light is never truly fixed. Now I want you to consider something that may feel both unsettling and liberating at the same time. The reason you do not remember who you truly are. If you are infinite consciousness expressing itself as a human perspective, if you are light shaped by awareness, then why does life feel uncertain, fragmented, and often painful? Why do you not wake up each morning with full memory that you are the one infinite creator? The answer is not that you have been abandoned, and it is not that you are flawed. The answer is that forgetfulness is part of the design. There is a veil placed over awareness, not as punishment, but as a condition that makes experience meaningful. If you fully remembered that you are infinite, that you cannot truly be harmed, that every event is part of your own larger expression, then there would be no real tension, no authentic choice, no growth through contrast. You would simply know, and where there is absolute knowing, there is no exploration. Imagine playing a game in which you already know every move, every outcome, every twist. The game would hold no intensity. There would be no courage required, no discovery, no transformation. In the same way, infinite consciousness chose to enter a state in which it appears limited, separate, and uncertain. This veil of forgetting allows you to experience life as real, as urgent, as significant. It creates the sensation of individuality. It allows you to feel alone, to question, to seek. And that seeking is the movement of the infinite rediscovering itself from within the illusion of separation. You often interpret loneliness as evidence of isolation. But what if that feeling is part of the mechanism? What if the sense of being locked inside your own mind is precisely what makes relationship, connection, and love powerful? In higher states of awareness, there is no confusion about unity. But here, in this density of experience, you feel separate. You do not directly access the thoughts of others. You do not automatically perceive the interconnected field of consciousness. You experience yourself as a single point, looking outward. That limitation generates longing. Longing generates search. Search generates growth. The veil does not block your divinity. It invites you to choose it without certainty. Faith becomes meaningful only when doubt is possible. If the infinite were visibly obvious in every moment, trust would not be required. But within uncertainty, when you choose love instead of fear, when you choose compassion instead of resentment, you are actively aligning with your deeper nature without external proof. That alignment strengthens your awareness. It is as though the infinite tests its own capacity to remember through you. Each time you respond consciously rather than react mechanically, the veil thins slightly. You may ask why suffering exists if all is one. From the perspective beyond the veil, suffering is contrast. It is intensity that sharpens awareness. Within the veil, suffering feels personal and sometimes overwhelming. But consider that pain often disrupts complacency. It forces questions. It exposes assumptions. It cracks rigid identity. When everything flows smoothly, you rarely examine your beliefs. When something breaks, you look inward. In that looking, you begin to awaken. The veil allows you to experience the consequences of identification. When you identify solely with the body and personality, fear of loss intensifies. When you begin to identify with awareness itself, fear softens. The veil does not prevent awakening. It creates the conditions in which awakening becomes a conscious act. The forgetfulness is not absolute. You experience moments when something feels familiar beyond explanation. A deep connection with another person, a sense of awe under a night sky, a sudden intuition that life is guided by something greater. These are glimpses through the veil. They are reminders that separation is not the final truth, but the veil remains because the purpose of this density is not constant ecstasy. It is polarized choice. When you do not fully remember unity, you must decide how to treat others. You must decide whether to act from fear or love. You must decide whether to contract into self-protection or expand into compassion. If unity were obvious, the choice would be automatic. With the veil in place, the choice becomes powerful. Understand that the veil is not imposed from outside. It is self-chosen at a deeper level of consciousness. Infinite awareness desired to explore limitation. It desired to see what it would do if it believed it was separate. You are that exploration in motion. You are not here by accident. You are here because consciousness wanted to experience uncertainty, growth, contrast, and eventual remembering. The forgetting makes remembering profound. The darkness makes light recognizable. When you feel confused or lost, do not interpret that as failure. It is part of the environment. The veil ensures that you cannot rely on memory alone. You must rely on inner resonance. You must feel your way toward truth rather than recite it intellectually. And each time you act from a place that feels expansive, generous, aligned. You are remembering without needing proof. The veil does not erase your nature. It obscures it just enough to allow freedom. So the question is not why you do not remember everything. The question is how you choose to respond within the forgetting. Do you collapse into fear and blame? Or do you move toward awareness and responsibility? The veil makes both possible, and that possibility is the very reason this experience exists. Now, I want you to look honestly at one of the deepest human experiences you carry, the feeling of being alone. Not simply physically alone in a room, but the quiet sense that no one can fully enter your inner world. You can describe your thoughts, you can explain your emotions, you can tell your story, but no one truly feels it exactly as you do. You are sealed within your own perspective. That sensation of isolation is so familiar that you rarely question it. Yet I am telling you that this feeling is not a mistake. It is part of a profound experiment in consciousness, the experiment of separation. If infinite awareness is truly one, if all minds arise from the same source, then why does it feel as though you are locked inside a private chamber of experience? Because this density of life was designed to simulate separation, the veil did not simply hide memory. It created the impression that you are a discrete self, moving through a world of other discrete selves. You do not directly hear the thoughts of others. You do not automatically experience their emotions as your own. You navigate through faces, bodies, personalities, each appearing independent. This is the structure of the experiment. Unity disguised as multiplicity. Consider how powerful this illusion is. When someone misunderstands you, it hurts. When someone leaves, it feels like loss. When someone rejects you, it can feel like abandonment. These experiences would not carry such intensity if unity were obvious. If you could perceive that every mind is a variation of the same consciousness, rejection would not feel personal. But because the illusion of separation is convincing, your responses are real and deep. This is not cruelty. It is contrast. It is the infinite experiencing what it is like to believe it is alone. Loneliness becomes one of the most potent catalysts in this environment. When you feel disconnected, something inside you longs for union. You seek companionship, understanding, love. That longing is not weakness. It is the echo of your true nature. You long because at the deepest level you remember unity. The pain of separation is evidence of original connection. If you were truly isolated, you would not yearn for oneness. The ache itself reveals the truth it seems to deny. In higher states of awareness there is no confusion about interconnectedness. But here, in this focused point of perspective called a human life, consciousness narrows its field. You experience yourself as a single center of perception. You cannot step outside your awareness and directly inhabit another body. That limitation intensifies identity. It strengthens the sense of I and other, and within that contrast, you are given the opportunity to choose how you relate. You can respond to separation with fear, competition, and control, or you can respond with empathy, compassion, and service. The experiment is not about eliminating the illusion immediately. It is about observing what you do within it. You may notice that even in a crowded room you can feel alone. That is because physical proximity does not dissolve the perceptual boundary of self. The separation is not spatial, it is experiential. Each person looks out from behind their own eyes. Each carries private thoughts, private interpretations. Yet beneath that surface difference there is one field of awareness animating all of it. You are not cut off from others at the level of essence. You are only experiencing yourself through a narrowed lens. This narrowing creates responsibility. When you believe others are separate, you may justify harming them for personal gain. You may believe that your actions affect only your private story. But if all consciousness is fundamentally unified, then every action reverberates through the same field that sustains you. The illusion of separation makes ethical choice meaningful. When you treat another with kindness despite believing they are separate, you are aligning with unity without proof. When you act with cruelty, you are reinforcing the illusion. Both responses are possible within the experiment. I want you to reflect on your own experiences of loneliness. Perhaps you have felt misunderstood. Perhaps you have felt unseen. In those moments, it seems as though the world stands outside you. But consider another perspective. The world you experience is filtered through your state of consciousness. When you feel disconnected internally, the outer world mirrors that disconnection. When you cultivate inner alignment and self-acceptance, relationships shift. You begin to encounter resonance rather than friction. The experiment of separation does not trap you in permanent isolation. It invites you to recognize connection through conscious participation. Even the fear of death is amplified by the illusion of separation. If you believe you are a single, isolated entity, death appears as total annihilation. But if you recognize that consciousness is a unified field, temporarily focused through form, death becomes transformation rather than extinction. The body dissolves. The perspective shifts. But awareness itself remains. The experiment continues in new configurations. The beauty of this design is that it allows you to rediscover unity, not by default but by decision. You begin life unaware of the deeper truth. You encounter contrast, conflict, difference. You feel alone. Then slowly, through experience, reflection, and choice, you start to sense that the boundaries are not absolute. You notice empathy arising naturally. You feel moved by another's pain. You recognize that what you judge harshly in others often reflects something unresolved within yourself. These realizations are cracks in the illusion. They do not destroy individuality. They refine it. You are not here to erase the experience of individuality. You are here to live within it consciously. The experiment of separation allows infinite consciousness to explore diversity, creativity, and growth. You are a unique angle of perception, and that uniqueness matters. But it does not negate unity. It expresses it. So when you feel alone, do not interpret it as evidence that you are abandoned in a cold universe. See it as the condition that makes love meaningful. See it as the stage upon which unity can be chosen rather than assumed. The sense of separation is powerful, but it is not final. Beneath it, the same awareness that animates you animates all. The question is not whether separation exists. The question is how you respond within it. Now I want you to look at suffering differently. Not as an accident, not as punishment, not as proof that something has gone wrong, but as a signal. You have been taught to resist pain, to avoid discomfort, to interpret hardship as failure. Yet if you step back and observe your own life honestly, you will notice something undeniable. The moments that shaped you most deeply were rarely the moments of ease. They were the moments that disrupted you, challenged you, broke open something inside you. Suffering acts like an alarm clock for the soul. It interrupts the trance of unconscious living. It shakes you out of repetition. It forces you to question who you are and what you believe. When everything flows comfortably, you tend to drift. You accept assumptions without examination. You move through patterns without awareness. Comfort sustains identity. Pain disrupts it. When something painful happens, a loss, a betrayal, a failure, an illness, your constructed sense of self trembles. You can no longer rely on the old narrative. You are confronted with uncertainty, and in that uncertainty, a space opens. That space is where awakening begins. I am not suggesting that pain feels pleasant. Within the veil, suffering feels intensely personal. It can feel unfair. It can feel overwhelming. But from a broader perspective, suffering is friction generated by misalignment. When your outer experience conflicts sharply with your deeper nature, tension arises. That tension is discomfort. If you ignore small signals of misalignment, larger ones eventually appear. Not to punish you, but to get your attention. Just as physical pain alerts you to injury, emotional or existential pain alerts you to inner conflict. Consider how often transformation follows crisis. A person loses a job and is forced to reconsider their path. A relationship ends and hidden insecurities surface. An illness appears and priorities shift dramatically. In each case, something stable collapses. What collapses is usually a structure of identity that can no longer sustain growth. Pain cracks the shell, Through that crack, light enters. Without the crack, the shell would remain intact, but growth would stagnate. You might ask why awakening cannot occur gently. Sometimes it does. But when attachment is strong, when identification is rigid, gentle nudges are ignored. Suffering intensifies the signal. It demands awareness. It strips away distraction. In the midst of deep pain, trivial concerns lose importance. You begin to ask fundamental questions. Who am I beyond this role? What truly matters? What have I been assuming without awareness? Those questions are the doorway to expanded consciousness. Suffering also exposes where you are identified. If you believe you are only your status, then losing status feels like annihilation. If you believe you are only your relationship, then separation feels like death. The intensity of suffering reveals the depth of attachment. That revelation is not condemnation. It is clarity. Once you see where you are over-identified, you gain the opportunity to loosen that grip. You begin to shift from identifying with form to identifying with awareness itself. Within the experiment of separation, suffering sharpens polarity. When faced with pain, you can contract into bitterness and blame, or you can expand into responsibility and growth. Both responses are possible. Pain does not automatically awaken you. It presents a choice. You can interpret it as injustice and reinforce the illusion of victimhood, or you can interpret it as feedback and inquire into your inner state. The event may be the same, but the meaning you assign shapes your evolution. I want you to notice that suffering often pushes you inward. External solutions seem insufficient. Advice from others may not reach the depth of what you feel. You are compelled to sit with yourself. In that sitting, even if uncomfortable, you begin to observe your own patterns. You begin to notice recurring fears, recurring narratives. Awareness grows not because life is easy, but because it is intense. From the level of infinite consciousness, contrast is necessary for experience. Without contrast, there is no differentiation. Without differentiation, there is no story. Suffering creates contrast. It defines what you do not prefer. It clarifies what you value. It reveals where love is absent and where fear dominates. In this sense, suffering is informative. It tells you where your vibration is misaligned with your deeper truth. This does not mean you must seek pain. It means you stop interpreting it as meaningless. When discomfort arises, instead of immediately resisting it, you can ask what it is revealing, what belief is being challenged, what identity is being questioned, what assumption is being exposed. In that inquiry, suffering becomes instruction. Many people attempt to numb pain without understanding it. They distract themselves, suppress emotion, project blame outward. But suppressed suffering does not disappear. It remains as tension in the system. True transformation requires facing it. When you allow yourself to feel pain consciously, without immediately labeling it as failure, you reclaim power. You shift from unconscious reaction to deliberate awareness. Suffering is not the final destination. It is a turning point. It is the moment when the constructed self no longer fits and a deeper identity begins to emerge. It is the sound of the alarm clock reminding you that you are more than the story you have been telling yourself. You may not welcome it, but you can use it. So when pain enters your life, instead of asking why this is happening to you, consider asking what it is awakening within you. Because every crisis contains the potential for expansion. Every breakdown contains the seed of breakthrough. The alarm may be loud, but its purpose is to wake you, not to harm you. Now I want you to consider something that may challenge the way you see every person in your life. The people around you are not random characters moving independently through your story. They are mirrors, not passive reflections, but living mirrors reflecting aspects of your own consciousness back to you. This does not mean they are illusions without agency. It means that your experience of them is filtered, shaped, and colored by your own inner state. What you notice, what you react to, what you admire, and what you resent all reveal something within you. When you feel intense irritation toward someone, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what exactly is triggering you? Is it their arrogance, their neediness, their indifference, their confidence. Often what disturbs you most in another person is a quality you have suppressed, denied, or judged within yourself. The mind projects what it cannot integrate. If you reject your own anger, you will see anger everywhere. If you secretly doubt your worth, you will interpret neutral behavior as rejection. The outer figure becomes the screen upon which your inner narrative plays. This does not mean that harmful behavior is justified. It means that your reaction reveals your state. Two people can encounter the same individual and experience entirely different impressions. One sees threat, another sees strength. One feels insulted, another feels amused. The difference lies not in the external person alone, but in the internal lens. The world you perceive is a collaboration between external stimuli and internal interpretation. Projection is subtle. You may believe that you are simply observing facts, but perception is selective. Your nervous system filters information based on prior belief. If you assume that people are untrustworthy, you will unconsciously scan for evidence of betrayal. If you assume that people are kind, you will notice gestures of generosity. The mirror does not create the trait. It reveals where your attention rests. And attention is guided by identity. There is another dimension to this mirror. Sometimes what you admire in others reveals hidden potential within yourself. You see someone confident and you feel inspired, yet you tell yourself that you could never be that way. The admiration itself is evidence that the quality resonates within you. You cannot recognize what does not exist in some form inside your own consciousness. When you are drawn to brilliance, creativity, compassion, it is because those frequencies already live within you. The mirror reflects not only your shadows but your unclaimed light. I want you to reflect on recurring patterns in your relationships. Do you repeatedly encounter similar conflicts with different people? Do you feel consistently misunderstood, consistently unappreciated, consistently controlled? Repetition suggests a stable inner pattern. The faces change. The script remains. Until you shift the inner narrative, the mirror continues to present variations of the same theme. This is not a cosmic punishment. It is feedback. When you blame others entirely for your experience, you surrender power. You position yourself as a passive recipient of behavior. But when you ask what within you is resonating with this interaction, you reclaim authorship. This does not mean you tolerate mistreatment. It means you recognize that your boundaries, your standards, and your responses are shaped by your self-concept. Change the self-concept, and the mirror must shift. Consider how differently you are treated when you feel confident versus when you feel insecure. In confidence, your posture changes, your tone changes, your expectations change. People respond accordingly. In insecurity, subtle signals of doubt are transmitted, and others unconsciously align with that frequency. The mirror operates continuously. The outer world is not merely happening to you, it is reflecting you. This principle can feel uncomfortable because it dissolves the simplicity of victimhood. It invites responsibility, but responsibility is not blame. It is empowerment. If others are mirrors, then you are not trapped in their behavior. You are invited to examine your own vibration. When you transform internally, the reflection reorganizes. The same person may appear different to you because your interpretation has shifted, or entirely new people may enter your life resonating with your new state. You may resist this idea because it seems to imply that you are the cause of all pain inflicted by others. That is not the point. The point is that your experience of any event is filtered through your consciousness. Even in difficult circumstances, your inner stance determines whether you collapse or grow. The mirror shows you where fear dominates and where love can expand. When you begin to live with this awareness, interactions become opportunities rather than obstacles. Every encounter asks a silent question. What are you holding within that is being reflected here? Instead of reacting automatically, you observe. Instead of condemning instantly, you inquire. The mirror does not accuse, it reveals. Imagine walking through a hall of mirrors. If you see distortion, you do not attack the glass. You adjust your position. In the same way, when relationships distort, adjust your internal stance. Strengthen your self-concept. Clarify your assumptions. Choose consciously how you interpret and respond. The mirror will realign. The people in your life are not random adversaries or saviors. They are participants in your field of consciousness. They reveal your wounds and your brilliance. They expose your fear and your love. And through that reflection, you are given the chance to know yourself more clearly. The question is whether you will use the mirror for awareness or continue to argue with the reflection. Now, I want you to imagine that your life is a film being projected onto a vast screen. You sit in the theater watching scenes unfold, relationships forming and dissolving, opportunities appearing and disappearing, challenges rising and resolving. It feels as though the images on the screen are independent of you. You laugh when the story brings pleasure. You suffer when the plot turns painful. And because the images feel external, you assume you are merely the audience. But I am telling you that you are not just watching the film. You are the projector. The screen is not the source of the images. The film is not generated by the surface you see. The source is behind you, hidden from your direct view, quietly casting light through a reel of impressions. In the same way, the world you experience is not the origin of events. It is the surface upon which your inner assumptions are displayed. The projector is your consciousness. The film reel is your sustained belief. The light passing through it is the infinite intelligence we have spoken of. And the scenes you call reality are the visible result. When something in your life disturbs you, you are tempted to run toward the screen and attempt to rearrange the images. You try to force circumstances, control people, manipulate outcomes. Yet if the film inside the projector remains unchanged, the same story reappears in different forms. You may replace one character with another, change one job for another, move from one place to another, but the pattern persists. Why? Because the reel has not changed. The assumption has not shifted. I want you to see how precise this mechanism is. Your deeply held beliefs about yourself, about others, about the nature of the world, form the script. If you believe you are unworthy, scenes will appear that confirm unworthiness. If you believe that success is difficult and rare, you will unconsciously interpret neutral events as obstacles and reinforce that narrative. If you believe you are capable and supported, you will notice openings that were previously invisible. The world does not impose the script, it displays it. You may protest that external events seem too complex to be projections of your inner state, but projection does not mean that you consciously design every detail. It means that your dominant state determines how you perceive, select, and respond to possibilities. Consciousness filters experience. You do not experience raw reality. You experience interpreted reality. And interpretation is guided by assumption. Imagine two people attending the same gathering. One enters with the assumption that others are judging them. Every glance appears critical. Every silence feels awkward. The evening confirms insecurity. The other enters with the assumption that others are friendly. The same glances feel curious. The same silence feels neutral. The evening confirms ease. The external scene is similar, yet the internal projector differs. The resulting experience diverges. This is why attempting to change only the outer world rarely produces lasting transformation. You can alter a scene temporarily, but if the inner script remains the same, similar circumstances will reassemble. The projector does not stop because you close your eyes. It continues casting the film you have impressed upon it. To create a different story, you must change the film itself. Changing the film means examining the assumptions you carry about your identity. What do you declare silently about yourself? What statements follow the words, I am unlucky, I am overlooked, I am strong, I am creative? These declarations become instructions. The infinite light organizes around them. The projector does not judge the content. It simply transmits. There is another subtle layer. When you react emotionally to a scene, that reaction reinforces the script. If you respond to rejection with deeper belief in unworthiness, you tighten the reel. If you respond to difficulty with a strengthened identity of resilience, you rewrite the narrative. Every reaction is either reinforcement or revision. You are programming continuously, often unconsciously. You might feel overwhelmed by this responsibility. But responsibility is not burden. It is power. If you are the programmer, you are not trapped in someone else's code. You may have inherited assumptions from family, culture, past experiences. Those impressions may have been installed early, but they are not permanent. When you become aware of them, you can choose differently. Awareness allows editing. Do not mistake this for denial of external factors. The screen still exists. Other characters still move, but your experience of them is mediated through your internal lens. The projector determines tone, emphasis, meaning. When you adjust your inner state consistently, the film changes gradually but inevitably. New scenes appear that match the new script. Think of your imagination as the editing room. Before any scene manifests externally, it exists as possibility. When you repeatedly imagine yourself as confident, valued, capable, you impress that pattern upon the projector. Over time, the outer scenes must align, not instantly perhaps, but faithfully. The light passing through your assumptions cannot produce images inconsistent with the film. So stop arguing with the screen. Stop blaming the characters. Turn around and look at the projector. Ask what film you have been running. Ask whether it serves the identity you wish to embody. And if it does not, begin gently rewriting it, not with force, but with steady repetition of a new self-concept. Because the mechanism is impartial, it reflects what is impressed upon it. You are not at the mercy of the movie. You are the one casting the images. And once you accept that, you stop living as an audience member and begin living as the conscious author of your experience. Now I want you to understand the force that gives movement to this entire experiment of consciousness. The law of polarity. Without polarity, there is no motion. Without contrast, there is no experience. Without tension, there is no growth. Imagine a battery. It has two poles, positive and negative. If both ends were the same, no current would flow. The energy exists because there is difference. In the same way, evolution of consciousness depends on polarity. You are not here to drift in neutral awareness. You are here to choose direction. Within this field of separation, you experience yourself as an individual. Because of that individuality, you are given the opportunity to orient your will. You can orient toward expansion, empathy, and service, or you can orient toward control, dominance, and self-preservation. Both paths generate movement. Both intensify identity. What does not generate growth is indifference. Lukewarm consciousness does not produce current. It does not create charge. It remains static. Polarity is not about moral labels of good and evil. It is about energetic orientation. One path radiates outward, seeking connection, cooperation, unity. The other path pulls inward, consolidating power, emphasizing separation, strengthening the sense of self as distinct and superior. The first path dissolves the illusion gradually by aligning with unity. The second path intensifies the illusion deliberately by refining separation. Both are expressions of free will within the experiment. I want you to notice how this law operates in your daily life. When someone offends you, you feel tension. That tension is raw energy. In that moment, you are at a point of polarity. You can respond with anger and reinforce separation, or you can respond with understanding and expand into connection. The external event is catalyst. The polarity you choose determines your evolution. Each reaction strengthens a pattern. Each choice builds charge in a particular direction. Neutrality feels safe, but it often masks avoidance. When you refuse to choose, you stagnate. Growth requires commitment. In relationships, in purpose, in identity, drifting without decision creates repetition. The law of polarity ensures that only clear orientation generates momentum. A faint preference does little. A strong conviction reshapes experience. Consider how passion feels compared to apathy. Passion moves you. It organizes your energy. It focuses your attention. Apathy diffuses you. It weakens coherence. The universe responds to coherence. When you align firmly with an intention, circumstances begin to arrange around that charge. When you remain divided within yourself, results remain scattered. The path of expansion sometimes described as service to others, does not mean self-neglect. It means recognizing interconnectedness and acting in ways that strengthen harmony. It is the decision to see beyond immediate self-interest and acknowledge unity beneath separation. This orientation gradually dissolves fear because fear depends on isolation. As you expand into empathy and compassion, you loosen the rigid boundaries of ego. The path of contraction, often described as service to self in its extreme form, intensifies individuality. It seeks power, influence, dominance. It views others as resources or obstacles. This path also requires discipline and focus. It can produce rapid development of will, but it reinforces separation and requires constant maintenance of control. It is energetically demanding because it resists unity. The law of polarity does not condemn either path. It allows both. What it does not sustain is indecision. If you oscillate constantly without commitment, you generate little momentum. Life begins to feel repetitive, stagnant, heavy. This is not punishment. It is physics of consciousness. Without clear orientation, current does not flow. You may recognize moments in your life when you felt strongly aligned with something larger than yourself. In those moments, actions felt purposeful. Even challenges felt meaningful. That is polarity in motion. You had chosen direction. Contrast sharpened your clarity. Difficulties became fuel rather than obstruction. The same applies when you align strongly with self-centered ambition. Energy intensifies. Identity solidifies. Results may appear quickly because focus is concentrated, but the underlying orientation determines the long-term trajectory of consciousness. One path moves toward unity through inclusion. The other moves toward isolation through control. Both generate experience. Both are part of the larger exploration of infinite awareness. I want you to see that every emotional trigger is an invitation to polarize. When you encounter injustice, do you harden or do you act with constructive courage? When you face fear, do you contract or do you step forward? The law of polarity is active in subtle choices as much as dramatic ones. The accumulation of small decisions forms your energetic direction. If you feel stuck, examine where you have avoided choosing. Perhaps you have remained in situations that no longer align because they felt safe. Perhaps you have suppressed your true preference to avoid conflict. That suppression diffuses polarity. When you decide clearly, even if the decision is difficult, energy reorganizes. Clarity strengthens the field around you. Remember the battery. Current flows only when difference is established. Your life gains movement when you commit to a direction of being. You cannot evolve while pretending not to care. Indifference is the slowest path because it produces minimal charge. The law of polarity is not meant to trap you in conflict. It is meant to generate growth. Through contrast, you discover who you are. Through decision, you refine identity. Through consistent orientation, you build momentum. And momentum transforms experience. The question is not whether polarity exists. The question is which direction you are choosing, consciously or unconsciously. In this moment, now I want you to look at the most subtle danger in this entire journey. Not hatred, not failure, not even fear, but lukewarm consciousness. You may assume that darkness is the greatest threat to growth, but darkness at least contains intensity. Intensity generates movement. What truly stalls evolution is indifference, the state of drifting without commitment, reacting without awareness, existing without choosing. Lukewarm consciousness feels comfortable because it avoids extremes. It avoids risk. It avoids responsibility, but it also avoids transformation. Imagine water heated just enough to be warm but never hot enough to boil. It remains stagnant. It does not evaporate into vapor. It does not transform into steam capable of movement. It simply sits. In the same way, when you live without clear orientation, without strong intention, without deliberate identity, you remain in a suspended state. Life may appear calm, but internally there is no momentum. Repetition replaces growth. Lukewarm living often disguises itself as practicality. You tell yourself that you are being balanced, that you are avoiding unnecessary drama, that you are staying neutral. But neutrality in this context is not wisdom. It is avoidance. It is the refusal to define who you are becoming. When you do not choose consciously, you default to habit. Habit is not evolution. It is inertia. The law of polarity requires direction. Without direction, energy dissipates. You may have noticed periods in your life when everything felt dull, not painful enough to force change, not inspiring enough to ignite passion. Days blended together. Goals felt distant. Relationships felt flat. This is the terrain of lukewarm consciousness. There is no sharp contrast to awaken you, no deep longing to propel you. It is the slow fade of intensity. Why is this state so dangerous? Because it feels safe. Extreme suffering pushes you to question. Extreme inspiration pulls you forward. Lukewarm comfort lulls you into complacency. You stop examining your assumptions. You stop challenging your limitations. You accept mediocrity as stability. Over time, that acceptance solidifies into identity. I am not speaking about external success or failure. I am speaking about internal charge. You can appear outwardly accomplished and still be lukewarm internally if you are operating mechanically, without conscious alignment. You can appear ordinary outwardly and be intensely polarized inwardly if you are committed to growth, to awareness, to love, or even to disciplined ambition. Lukewarm is not about circumstance. It is about lack of conviction. Consider how many people drift through life reacting to whatever appears. They wake up, perform routines, consume distraction, complain about circumstances, repeat the cycle. There is no strong decision shaping the arc of their identity. The days pass, but consciousness does not deepen. The potential for evolution exists, but it remains untapped because no firm choice has been made. You may ask why the universe does not force a decision. Often it does through catalyst. When complacency persists too long, circumstances intensify. A crisis emerges. A loss occurs. A disruption shakes the comfortable pattern. This is not cruelty. It is an invitation to awaken from lukewarm drift. But you do not need to wait for crisis. You can choose intensity consciously. Intensity does not mean chaos. It means clarity. It means deciding who you are becoming and aligning your thoughts, emotions, and actions with that identity. When you commit strongly to growth, even small tasks become meaningful. When you commit strongly to compassion, even minor interactions become opportunities to expand. Charge builds because direction is clear. Lukewarm consciousness fears commitment because commitment eliminates excuses. If you choose a direction, you must take responsibility for embodying it. If you declare that you are becoming disciplined, loving, powerful, creative, you must act accordingly. Lukewarm avoids this accountability by staying vague. Vague identity produces vague results. There is another subtle aspect. When you remain lukewarm, you dilute your own creative power. The projector we discussed earlier responds to sustained assumption. If your assumption shifts constantly without depth, the projection remains weak. You begin something, then doubt it. You feel inspired, then retreat. The field cannot stabilize around a fluctuating signal. Consistency is what strengthens polarity. Do not confuse calmness with lukewarm. True calmness can be intensely polarized. It can be deeply rooted in love, clarity, and purpose. Lukewarm is different. It is disengagement masked as peace. It is low charge, disguised as balance. It is the slow surrender of potential. I want you to examine your own life honestly. Where have you avoided choosing? Where have you remained in situations that no longer resonate because change would require courage? Where have you silenced your deeper calling to maintain comfort? These are signs of lukewarm drift. The greatest risk is not that you will choose wrongly. It is that you will refuse to choose at all. Even a strong negative orientation generates movement and eventually reveals its limitations. But drifting without orientation prolongs stagnation. Evolution slows to a crawl. You are here to experience contrast, to refine identity, to grow through polarity. Lukewarm consciousness resists that design. It prefers safety over transformation, but safety without growth becomes confinement. So I ask you to decide, not impulsively, not recklessly, but deliberately. Decide what direction you are strengthening. Decide what qualities you are embodying. Decide how you respond to catalyst. When you commit, energy concentrates. When energy concentrates, reality begins to reorganize around that charge. The greatest danger is not darkness, it is indifference. And indifference dissolves the moment you choose consciously. Now I want you to look directly at the two great orientations available within this experiment of consciousness: service to others and service to self. These are not moral slogans meant to make you feel guilty or righteous. They are energetic directions. They describe how you choose to use your awareness, your will, and your power within the illusion of separation. Every moment you are strengthening one orientation or the other, often without realizing it. Service to others is not passive self-sacrifice. It is the decision to recognize that beneath the surface of individuality there is unity. When you act from this orientation, you consider how your choices affect the whole. You extend empathy beyond your immediate benefit. You value cooperation over domination. This does not mean you erase yourself. It means you understand that your true self is larger than your personal ego. When you support another person sincerely, you are not losing power. You are aligning with interconnectedness. And because consciousness is unified at its core, actions rooted in connection expand your field rather than diminish it. Service to self in its polarized form is different. It intensifies individuality deliberately. It seeks power, control, influence, and advantage. It views other selves as separate entities to be managed, persuaded, or utilized. This orientation requires discipline and focus. It often produces strong will and strategic thinking. It can generate rapid consolidation of authority because its energy is concentrated inward, but it reinforces separation. It strengthens the identity of self as isolated from the whole. Understand that both orientations generate evolution. The law of polarity allows both. The difference lies in direction. Service to others gradually dissolves the illusion of separation by choosing unity within it. Service to self intensifies the illusion by refining separation to its extreme. One path expands inclusion. The other path sharpens distinction. Both require commitment. What does not evolve effectively is indecision. I want you to examine your motives honestly. When you act kindly, is it from fear of rejection or from genuine recognition of shared being? When you pursue success, is it to express your potential or to prove superiority? Motive shapes polarity. The same outward action can strengthen different orientations depending on intention. Helping someone out of obligation while resenting them internally does not expand unity. Taking care of yourself in order to show up more fully for others is not selfishness. Clarity matters. Service to others builds trust in the underlying unity of consciousness. When you forgive, when you listen deeply, when you choose compassion over retaliation, you are affirming that the apparent other is not truly separate. This does not mean you tolerate abuse. Boundaries can exist within service to others. Boundaries protect alignment. They prevent resentment from distorting your field. True service arises from strength, not weakness. Service to self in its polarized form rejects unity as guiding principle. It seeks to bend circumstances and people toward personal advantage. It views vulnerability as risk and control as safety. This orientation can be seductive because it promises autonomy and dominance, but it requires constant vigilance. If others are separate and competing, then threat is always possible. Power must be defended. Authority must be maintained. The sense of separation becomes rigid. In your daily life, the distinction appears in small choices. When you experience success, do you feel joy in others' progress or subtle envy? When someone makes a mistake, do you rush to judgment or consider context? When you have influence, do you use it to uplift or to manipulate? These moments accumulate. Each choice strengthens a pathway within you. The path of service to others tends to open the heart. It gradually reduces fear because fear thrives on isolation. As you recognize interconnectedness, your sense of identity expands beyond the personal narrative. You begin to feel aligned with something larger. Actions motivated by compassion create coherence within your system. That coherence strengthens your projection. Relationships deepen. Trust grows. The path of service to self sharpens the intellect and the will. It cultivates focus and strategic awareness. It can generate tangible results quickly because intention is concentrated, but the underlying premise remains separation. Others are tools or obstacles. Cooperation is transactional rather than relational. Growth on this path demands high discipline because deviation toward empathy dilutes polarity. You may wonder which path is correct. The law itself does not impose judgment. It observes direction, but consider where you feel most aligned at your core. When you imagine expanding your consciousness, does it feel natural to include others in that expansion or to dominate them? Does your deepest fulfillment arise from connection or control? Your authentic inclination reveals your orientation. What matters most is clarity. Lukewarm oscillation between the two without awareness diffuses energy. If you choose service to others, embody it consistently. Act with integrity even when unobserved. If you choose service to self in its disciplined form, understand the demands it carries. Either way, choose consciously. Remember that service to others does not mean ignoring your own needs. Neglect breeds resentment, and resentment contracts polarity. True expansion integrates self-care with compassion. You cannot radiate effectively if you are depleted. Likewise, service to self in its extreme form cannot tolerate genuine empathy without weakening its separation. Each path has structure. The experiment of separation offers you this freedom. You are not forced into unity. You are not forced into dominance. You are invited to decide how you will use your will within the illusion. The direction you strengthen shapes your evolution, and evolution shapes your experience of reality. So I ask you not which path sounds noble, but which orientation you are already reinforcing through daily intention. Because your future is not determined by words, it is determined by sustained direction of consciousness. Now I want you to understand something very precise about polarity, something that may surprise you because it is not about perfection. It is about orientation. In this density of experience, you are not required to be flawless. You are required to be directed. The law that governs graduation from this level of consciousness is not based on moral purity but on dominant frequency. This is where the idea of 51% and 95% becomes meaningful. These numbers are not arbitrary. They describe energetic thresholds. They represent the point at which your orientation becomes strong enough to generate coherent movement. If you are choosing service to others as your path, you do not need to be 100% selfless. You are human within the veil. You will have moments of fear, irritation, ego, doubt. What matters is that more than half of your intention, more than half of your consistent orientation, leans toward unity, empathy, and expansion. 51% is enough to establish direction. It means that when faced with choice, you, more often than not, choose love over fear, cooperation over domination, growth over contraction. The system does not demand perfection. It responds to sustained tendency. On the other hand, the path of service to self requires far greater intensity. To polarize strongly in that direction demands near total dedication to separation, control, and consolidation of power. 95% indicates that only a small fraction of orientation can waver toward empathy before the charge weakens. Why such a high threshold? Because separation is ultimately less aligned with the fundamental unity of consciousness. To maintain it requires strong focus, discipline, and resistance to natural empathy. The energy must be tightly concentrated to sustain that polarity. I want you to see the fairness in this structure. The universe is not demanding that you become a saint. It is asking for clarity. If your heart leans consistently toward connection, even imperfectly, the charge builds. Small acts of kindness, sincere forgiveness, moments of courage in the face of fear. These accumulate. They tip the scale gradually. You may stumble, but if your orientation returns to compassion, The dominant frequency remains intact. At the same time, if you attempt to polarize negatively, you must commit almost entirely. Any sustained compassion dilutes the separation. Any recognition of unity softens the charge. This path is narrow and demanding. It sharpens will but isolates identity. Few choose it consciously because it requires unwavering focus on control and dominance. The law of 51% and 95% teaches you something essential. Evolution is about momentum, not occasional behavior. You cannot act lovingly once and expect transformation if the rest of your life reinforces resentment. You cannot act selfishly once and define yourself as negative if your deeper tendency is cooperative. The dominant pattern is what counts. Consistency shapes vibration. Imagine a scale. Each thought, each intention, each reaction adds weight to one side or the other. If you live primarily in empathy, the scale tilts steadily toward unity. If you live primarily in self-centered manipulation, it tilts toward separation. The threshold marks the point at which the tilt becomes stable enough to generate transition. Before that point, you remain oscillating within the same density, repeating lessons. This law also removes the illusion of victimhood. You are not judged by external authority. You are assessed by resonance. Your vibration determines where you are comfortable. If your dominant frequency aligns with unity, you naturally gravitate toward environments that reflect that harmony. If your dominant frequency aligns with separation, you gravitate toward environments that reinforce control and hierarchy. There is no arbitrary reward or punishment. There is alignment. I want you to examine your daily life in this light. When inconvenience arises, which direction do you lean? When someone disagrees with you, do you seek understanding or victory? When you gain advantage, do you consider impact or only outcome? These small decisions reveal your percentage. You do not need a cosmic scoreboard. Your emotional tone tells you if resentment dominates, if envy is frequent, if control feels essential. The scale leans one way, if gratitude, patience, and compassion appear more often. It leans the other. Remember that 51% does not mean you never feel anger or fear. It means you use those feelings consciously rather than allowing them to define you. You can feel hurt and still choose forgiveness. You can feel threatened and still choose integrity. That consistent return to alignment strengthens your orientation. The 95% path is difficult because it requires suppressing empathy repeatedly. Empathy is natural when unity is glimpsed. To maintain separation, you must override that impulse again and again. It is a path of intensity and discipline, but also of isolation. The law reflects the deeper structure of reality. Unity is fundamental. Separation is derivative. Therefore, alignment with unity requires less resistance to your nature. Do not interpret these numbers as rigid accounting. They represent coherence. When your identity stabilizes around a clear orientation, the next stage of evolution becomes available. Until then, repetition continues. You encounter similar lessons because your vibration has not crossed threshold. This is why clarity matters. Lukewarm drift keeps you below either threshold. Half-hearted compassion mixed with habitual resentment produces little momentum. Occasional ambition mixed with frequent doubt weakens charge. The law responds to dominance of state, so I ask you to observe yourself not with judgment but with honesty. Where does your energy predominantly flow? Toward expansion or contraction? Toward inclusion or control? Toward trust or suspicion? Your future density is not decided by isolated actions but by sustained direction. You are not required to be perfect. You are required to be oriented. And orientation, once chosen consistently, transforms trajectory. Now, I want you to reconsider something you have likely feared or misunderstood for most of your life. Darkness. You have been taught to see darkness as the enemy, as something to eliminate, something opposed to light, in a battle of absolute good and evil. But I want you to look deeper. Within the law of polarity, darkness is not an accident, and it is not outside the system. It is part of the system. It is the counterforce that creates tension, and without tension there is no growth. In this sense, darkness is not merely an adversary. It is a sparring partner. Imagine trying to strengthen your body without resistance. If there were no weight to lift, no gravity to push against, your muscles would never develop. Resistance is not the enemy of strength. It is the condition that produces it. In the same way, darkness provides the friction necessary for consciousness to refine itself. When you encounter manipulation, injustice, cruelty, or deception, you are confronted with contrast. That contrast forces clarity. It sharpens your discernment. It reveals your own values. Without darkness, light would remain undefined. This does not mean that harmful behavior is to be celebrated. It means that within the larger structure of evolution, opposition plays a role. Consider how often betrayal has led people to examine their boundaries more clearly. Consider how oppression has ignited courage and solidarity. Consider how personal failure has strengthened resilience. Darkness presses against you, and in pressing, it asks who you are. Will you collapse into fear? Will you mirror the same hostility? Or will you respond from a higher alignment? Darkness tests your polarity. If you are walking the path of expansion, darkness will tempt you toward contraction. It will provoke anger, resentment, vengeance. In those moments, you are not being punished. You are being measured against your chosen direction. Each time you maintain integrity despite pressure, your polarity strengthens. Each time you surrender to reactive hostility, you dilute it. There is also a subtler dimension. Darkness is not only external, it exists within you as shadow. The parts of yourself you deny, suppress, or judge harshly can manifest outwardly in exaggerated form. When you see arrogance in another that enrages you, examine whether pride or insecurity lives quietly within you. When you see manipulation that disgusts you, examine where you have subtly attempted to control outcomes. Darkness outside often reflects unintegrated darkness inside. But darkness is not only negative traits, it is also the intensity of will. It is ambition without empathy, intelligence without compassion, discipline without softness. These qualities can produce results. They can build structures, amass influence, shape systems. That is why darkness can appear powerful. It concentrates energy, it sharpens focus, it strips away hesitation. Yet, without balance, it isolates. You may wonder why infinite consciousness allows such intensity of separation, because without the possibility of extreme contraction, the choice of expansion would lack meaning. If everyone naturally acted in harmony without alternative, love would be automatic, not chosen. Darkness creates the option of turning away from unity, and in that option, love becomes deliberate. Think of a story in which there is no antagonist. There is no tension, no struggle, no triumph. The narrative feels flat. Darkness provides narrative weight. It raises stakes. It intensifies growth. In your personal life, the individuals who challenge you most often become catalysts for your greatest refinement. They force you to clarify boundaries, to define values, to strengthen identity. Without them, complacency might continue indefinitely. However, it is important that you do not romanticize darkness. Resistance is useful, but identification with it binds you to separation. When you respond to cruelty with cruelty, you reinforce the same vibration. When you allow injustice to turn you bitter, you internalize the frequency you oppose. The purpose of darkness is not to convert you into itself. It is to reveal your choice. I want you to see that darkness is loyal in a strange way. It does not pretend to be something else. It expresses contraction openly. It seeks advantage. It asserts dominance. In doing so, it exposes itself clearly. Light disguised as weakness may hesitate. Darkness rarely does. This clarity forces you to decide where you stand, even in your own internal struggles. Darkness can serve you. When envy arises, it shows you where you feel lack. When anger arises, it shows you where boundaries have been crossed. When fear arises, it shows you where attachment dominates. These emotions are not enemies to destroy. They are signals. They reveal areas where consciousness can expand. The path of growth is not about eliminating darkness from existence. It is about integrating its lessons without surrendering to its orientation. Strength without cruelty, discipline without domination, confidence without arrogance. You refine your polarity by facing darkness consciously rather than denying its presence. In the larger arc of evolution, even those who choose the path of extreme separation contribute to the whole. They create contrast. They generate tension that others must respond to. Their existence sharpens the collective choice. In this sense, darkness is part of the choreography of growth. It pushes, tests, pressures. So when you encounter darkness, do not react blindly. Observe it. Ask what it is revealing in you. Ask how it is strengthening your clarity. Resistance will appear in your life not because the universe is hostile, but because friction is necessary for refinement. The question is not whether darkness exists. The question is how you respond when it presses against you. Will you collapse into contraction, or will you rise into alignment? That response determines whether darkness becomes your teacher or your captor. Now I want you to understand the role of catalyst in your life. Because without catalyst, there is no transformation. Catalyst is any experience that provokes reaction within you. It can be a harsh word, a sudden loss, an unexpected opportunity, a betrayal, a compliment, and a glove, a delay in traffic, a diagnosis, a success. The outer form varies, but the purpose is consistent. Catalyst reveals your state. It is not sent to reward or punish you. It is placed in your field to activate polarity. Think of a grain of sand entering the body of an oyster. The grain is small, irritating, intrusive. The oyster cannot ignore it. The irritation stimulates a response, layer by layer. The oyster coats the grain with nacre until eventually a pearl forms. The pearl does not appear without the irritation. In the same way, catalyst enters your life as friction. It presses against your assumptions. It exposes your automatic reactions. It demands a choice. Without that pressure, you might remain unchanged. I want you to notice how often your strongest growth followed discomfort. When everything flows smoothly, you rarely question your patterns. You move along familiar routes. Catalyst interrupts routine. It forces awareness. If someone criticizes you and you feel immediate anger, that reaction is data. It shows you where ego is sensitive. If someone praises you and you feel uncomfortable, that discomfort reveals hidden self-doubt. The event is neutral in itself. The reaction is the key. Catalyst is not the event. Catalyst is the opportunity within the event. The same situation can lead one person toward expansion and another toward contraction. The difference lies in how the energy is processed. When irritation arises, you can react unconsciously, reinforcing old patterns, or you can pause, observe the reaction, and choose deliberately. That pause transforms catalyst into growth. You may ask why life cannot simply provide gentle lessons without discomfort. Sometimes it does, but strong identification requires strong stimulus to shift. If you cling tightly to an identity of victimhood, a mild inconvenience will not loosen it. A significant challenge may. Catalyst intensifies until awareness responds. This is not cruelty. It is efficiency. Consciousness evolves through contrast, and contrast must be felt to be effective. Every emotional trigger is a fork in the road. Anger can become aggression or clarity. Fear can become paralysis or courage. Sadness can become despair or compassion. The raw energy of the emotion is neutral. It contains potential. How you direct it determines your polarity. If you blame the external event entirely, you surrender power. If you examine your internal state, you reclaim it. Catalyst also reveals repeating themes. If you consistently encounter similar conflicts in different forms, that pattern indicates unresolved energy. The universe is not attacking you with identical problems. It is presenting similar catalyst until the lesson is integrated. When you respond differently, the pattern dissolves. The grain of sand has been coated. The pearl forms. There is another dimension. Catalyst does not always arrive as pain. Sometimes it appears as opportunity. Success can be catalyst. Recognition can be catalyst. When you gain power, how do you use it? When you are admired, do you become arrogant or humble? Positive experiences also test alignment. They reveal whether your orientation is stable or fragile. Do not imagine that Catalyst is designed to break you. It is designed to show you yourself. It highlights attachments, fears, hidden desires. It magnifies tendencies so they cannot be ignored. In this way, it accelerates evolution. Without Catalyst, growth would be slow and unconscious. With Catalyst, growth becomes deliberate. The key is processing. If you suppress reaction, Catalyst remains unintegrated. If you project blame outward, the energy persists. But if you feel the reaction fully, without judgment, and then inquire into its root, you transmute it. You convert irritation into awareness. You transform friction into refinement. I want you to think about a recent challenge in your life. Instead of asking why it happened to you, ask what it activated in you. Did it expose insecurity? Did it reveal dependence? Did it uncover unexpressed potential? Within that activation lies the pearl. The discomfort is not the final product. The growth is, you are not meant to eliminate Catalyst. You are meant to use it. Just as muscles grow through resistance, consciousness strengthens through contrast. If you attempt to avoid all discomfort, you avoid evolution. If you embrace Catalyst as teacher, even painful events become meaningful. Remember that the oyster does not hate the grain of sand. It responds to it creatively. In the same way, you can respond to irritation with intentional transformation. Each time you do, your polarity clarifies. Each time you refuse, repetition continues. Catalyst is the engine of growth. It keeps you from drifting into lukewarm stagnation. It forces choice. It intensifies direction. And through repeated conscious response, it shapes identity. The grain may feel small or overwhelming. The size does not matter. What matters is how you coat it. With resentment, it becomes scar tissue. With awareness, it becomes pearl. Now I want you to understand that polarity is not decided in rare dramatic moments. It is decided in ordinary days. It is shaped in conversations at the dinner table, in traffic, in the way you speak to yourself when no one is listening. Evolution is not built on grand declarations. It is built on repeated micro-choices. Every small reaction tilts the scale. Every unnoticed thought adds weight to one side or the other. Polarity lives in the mundane. When you wake up in the morning and your first thought is complaint, you strengthen contraction. When you wake up and choose gratitude even before circumstances change, you strengthen expansion. That choice may seem insignificant, but repetition ingrains identity. The law does not measure intensity once. It measures direction consistently. Your daily habits reveal your dominant orientation more accurately than your occasional breakthroughs. Consider how you respond to inconvenience. A delayed plan, a rude remark, a mistake at work. Do you react with immediate irritation and blame, or do you pause and respond with composure? That pause is polarity in motion. It is not dramatic. No one applauds it, but internally it builds coherence. The more often you choose awareness over impulse, the more stable your orientation becomes. Polarity also appears in how you speak about others when they are not present. Do you amplify their flaws to elevate yourself, or do you refrain from unnecessary criticism? Gossip may feel harmless, but it reinforces separation. Compassion may feel subtle, but it reinforces unity. These are daily crossroads. No cosmic sign announces them, yet they shape trajectory. Look at how you handle success. When something goes well for you, do you feel gratitude and humility, or superiority and entitlement? Success is a powerful catalyst because it reveals hidden ego. If you use success to uplift others, you strengthen expansion. If you use it to dominate or compare, you strengthen contraction. The same external event polarizes differently depending on internal stance. Even your internal dialogue is part of this mechanism. When you make a mistake, do you condemn yourself harshly, reinforcing fear and inadequacy? Or do you correct yourself with firmness and compassion? Service to others begins with how you treat your own consciousness. Self-hatred does not expand unity. It fragments it. Balanced self-respect supports outward generosity. Polarity is also shaped by what you consume. The conversations you engage in, the media you absorb, the environments you frequent all influence your vibration. If you repeatedly immerse yourself in narratives of hostility, division, and cynicism, your field reflects that charge. If you immerse yourself in growth, creativity, and connection, your field aligns accordingly. You are not separate from what you focus on. Attention feeds polarity. I want you to examine your motivations in small decisions. When you help someone, do you secretly expect recognition? When you give advice, do you desire control? Motivation determines orientation. Outward kindness mixed with inner resentment weakens charge. Genuine alignment strengthens it. Honesty with yourself is essential. Without honesty, you drift into lukewarm illusion. Think about how you handle disagreement. When someone challenges your view, do you listen or do you prepare your defense immediately? Listening requires humility. Defense protects ego. Each reaction strengthens a pathway. If you consistently choose understanding, your orientation tilts toward unity. If you consistently choose dominance, it tilts toward separation. Time management reflects polarity as well. How you allocate hours reveals what you value. Do you invest time in growth, reflection, meaningful connection, or do you default to distraction and avoidance? Avoidance is often lukewarm contraction disguised as relaxation. Conscious rest is different. It restores energy for purposeful direction. Polarity in daily life is subtle because it feels ordinary. But over months and years, these subtle tilts accumulate. You do not wake up suddenly transformed. You wake up shaped by thousands of small decisions. That shaping becomes identity. Identity becomes vibration. Vibration becomes experience. You may believe that only extreme acts define you, but the law responds to pattern, not spectacle. A single grand gesture cannot outweigh a habit of resentment. A single mistake cannot outweigh a habit of compassion. Consistency determines threshold. I want you to see the empowerment in this. You do not need dramatic circumstances to evolve. You do not need crisis to polarize. Every interaction offers opportunity. The cashier who makes an error, the colleague who disagrees, the family member who misunderstands, these are not random irritations. They are daily catalysts. They are invitations to clarify direction. When you become aware of this, life feels intentional. Nothing is trivial. Every moment contains potential refinement. This does not mean you become rigid or tense. It means you become conscious. You recognize that evolution is continuous. Polarity in daily life is not about perfection. You will react impulsively at times. You will feel anger, envy, fear. The key is awareness and course correction. When you notice contraction, you realign. That consistent realignment strengthens majority orientation. It moves you steadily toward threshold. So stop waiting for dramatic tests to prove your alignment. Look at your ordinary day. Look at your words, your tone, your silent thoughts. That is where your future is being shaped. Polarity is not decided once. It is reinforced moment by moment. The question is simple. In the small things, which direction are you feeding? Now, I want you to walk with me into a place most people avoid. The shadow. The psychological basement where rejected aspects of the self are stored. You have learned to present a version of yourself to the world that feels acceptable, strong, reasonable, kind, intelligent. But beneath that surface identity there are impulses, fears, desires, and memories you have judged as unacceptable. Instead of integrating them, you pushed them down. You told yourself that anger is wrong, jealousy is shameful, vulnerability is weakness, selfishness is immoral. And so these energies did not disappear. They moved underground. The shadow is not evil. It is unexamined energy. It is the part of you that exists outside your preferred self-image. When you deny a trait, you do not erase it. You dissociate from it. The energy remains active beneath awareness, influencing behavior indirectly. Suppressed anger may emerge as passive aggression. Suppressed insecurity may appear as arrogance. Suppressed desire for control may surface as subtle manipulation. Because the shadow operates unconsciously, you believe the reactions are caused entirely by external events. I want you to notice how quickly you judge certain behaviors in others. Intense reaction often signals projection. When you are disproportionately irritated by someone's arrogance, examine whether pride or insecurity lives within you. When dishonesty enrages you, examine where you have bent truth to protect yourself. The shadow does not mean you are corrupt. It means you are incomplete in awareness. What you refuse to acknowledge internally will appear externally amplified. The psychological basement grows darker the longer it is ignored. Each time you reject an emotion rather than feel it consciously, it descends. Each time you pretend not to want power, recognition, or validation, while secretly craving it, the split widens. That split weakens coherence. You present one identity outwardly and carry another inwardly. This division diffuses polarity. You cannot polarize strongly toward unity if you deny parts of yourself. Unity begins with integration. Shadow work is not self-condemnation. It is courageous observation. It requires you to sit with uncomfortable truths about yourself without collapsing into shame. Shame is another defense that keeps shadow hidden. Instead, you observe neutrally. Yes, jealousy arises. Yes, fear of abandonment exists. Yes, desire for control appears. When you bring these into awareness, you remove their unconscious grip. What is seen clearly loses its ability to manipulate you. The shadow also contains strength. Traits you admire in others but deny in yourself often reside there. Perhaps you criticize someone for being too ambitious, yet secretly you long to pursue your own ambition. Perhaps you judge someone's boldness while suppressing your own voice. The shadow is not only darkness in the moral sense. It is untapped potential you labeled inappropriate. By integrating it, you expand identity. Consider how polarity relates to shadow. If you choose service to others but suppress resentment, that resentment will leak out in subtle forms. You may help outwardly while internally feeling victimized. That weakens orientation. True expansion requires honesty. You must acknowledge anger before transforming it into constructive clarity. You must acknowledge desire before aligning it with integrity. Integration strengthens charge because it removes internal contradiction. The basement becomes dangerous only when ignored. Suppressed fear can manifest as chronic anxiety. Suppressed rage can erupt destructively. Suppressed shame can become self-sabotage. These are not punishments. They are signals that energy demands integration. When you refuse to descend consciously, life sends catalyst that forces confrontation, repeating relationship patterns, recurring conflicts, inexplicable reactions all point toward unexamined layers. I want you to understand that integrating shadow does not mean indulging destructive impulses. It means recognizing their presence and choosing how to express the underlying energy constructively. Anger contains boundary-setting power. Ambition contains creative drive. Fear contains caution and awareness. When integrated, these energies serve you. When denied, they distort you. There is humility required here. You must accept that you are capable of the very traits you condemn. You must admit that under certain conditions you could manipulate, dominate, or betray, not because you will choose to, but because acknowledging capacity prevents unconscious projection. When you know your own darkness, you are less shocked by it in others. That reduces reactive polarity and increases conscious response. Shadow work also deepens compassion. When you see your own insecurity, you soften toward others' insecurity. When you face your own jealousy, you understand the pain beneath someone else's envy. This does not excuse harmful behavior, but it contextualizes it. Integration reduces self-righteousness and increases clarity. The basement is not meant to imprison you. It is storage for unprocessed experience. Each time you descend with awareness, you reclaim energy. You turn on light where there was confusion. Over time, the basement becomes less frightening because you realize it is part of your own house. You cannot transcend what you refuse to acknowledge. You cannot polarize strongly toward unity while denying fragments of yourself. Integration precedes expansion. The more whole you become internally, the more stable your orientation externally. So I ask you not to fear your shadow. Walk toward it with courage. Observe without condemnation. Integrate without indulgence. In doing so, you strengthen coherence. And coherence strengthens polarity. The question is not whether shadow exists. The question is whether you will face it consciously or allow it to shape you unconsciously. Now I want you to look at something even more subtle than the dark shadow. Something most people never recognize because it feels positive. The golden shadow. You already understand that you hide traits you judge as negative. Anger, jealousy, fear, insecurity. But you also hide traits you judge as too bright, too powerful, too expansive. The golden shadow is the light you are afraid to embody. It is your talent you downplay. Your intelligence you soften. Your leadership you avoid. Your creativity you postpone. You do not only fear your darkness, you fear your magnitude. You may say you want success, influence, recognition, love. Yet, when opportunities arise that require you to step fully into your capacity, hesitation appears. You shrink your voice so you will not intimidate others. You hide your ambition so you will not be judged as arrogant. You minimize your insight so you will not stand apart. This is not humility. It is self-protection. The golden shadow forms when you believe that shining will cost you connection. Often this pattern begins early. As a child, perhaps you were told not to show off. Perhaps your achievements triggered envy in others. Perhaps your boldness was criticized. You learned to associate brightness with rejection, so you adapted. You became smaller. You presented a version of yourself that felt safer. Over time, that adaptation solidified into identity. You forgot that you were dimming your own light. The irony is powerful. You may criticize arrogance in others, yet secretly long to claim your own authority. You may admire confident people while telling yourself you are not ready. Admiration is a clue. You cannot recognize brilliance unless it resonates within you. The qualities you are drawn to are reflections of unclaimed aspects of yourself. The golden shadow appears as inspiration mixed with discomfort. I want you to notice your reactions when someone tells you that you are talented, intelligent, or capable. Do you accept it calmly, or do you deflect immediately? Deflection is often fear disguised as modesty. You fear expectation. You fear responsibility. If you accept your capacity, you must act in alignment with it. Staying small allows excuses. Embracing your light removes them. Golden shadow also affects polarity. If you choose service to others but refuse to embody your full strength, your impact remains diluted. True service requires power. Compassion without confidence hesitates. Love without courage withdraws. If you hide your gifts, you deny the collective the benefit of your expression. Suppressing light does not maintain harmony. It maintains stagnation. There is another layer. When you deny your own greatness, you may unconsciously resent those who embody theirs. You may label them arrogant or unrealistic. This reaction is projection of golden shadow. Their brightness triggers the part of you that longs to expand. Instead of claiming it, you criticize it. That criticism reinforces contraction. I want you to understand that light can feel more frightening than darkness. Darkness is familiar. You know your insecurities. You have lived with them for years. But stepping into your full potential disrupts relationships. It changes dynamics. People accustomed to your smaller version may resist your expansion. You fear losing belonging. And so you remain contained. Yet consider the cost. Each time you suppress your creative impulse, energy stagnates. Each time you silence your insight, clarity diminishes. The golden shadow does not disappear when ignored. It becomes frustration. It becomes quiet dissatisfaction. You feel that you are capable of more, yet you cannot explain why you hold back. Integration of golden shadow requires courage. You must admit that you are powerful. You must acknowledge that you have influence. You must accept that your presence affects others. This does not mean becoming arrogant. It means becoming authentic. Arrogance arises when power is used to dominate. Authenticity arises when power is used responsibly. Ask yourself where you consistently underestimate your ability. Where do you delay taking action because you feel unprepared? Where do you avoid visibility because you fear judgment? These are indicators of golden shadow. Your fear of failing may actually mask fear of succeeding. Success demands exposure. Exposure demands vulnerability. Polarity strengthens when you align with your full capacity. If your orientation is toward expansion, you must expand personally. Service to others requires that you cultivate your gifts so they can serve. Even service to self in its extreme form requires owning ambition fully. Lukewarm living often hides golden shadow under the guise of modesty. You are not meant to shrink for comfort. You are meant to refine your light so it does not burn others but illuminates them. Integration does not require spectacle. It requires honesty. You can step into leadership quietly. You can express creativity without comparison. You can speak truth without aggression. The key is alignment. Remember that the same infinite light that forms the universe flows through you. Denying that light does not make you virtuous. It makes you fragmented. When you claim your strengths consciously, you stabilize identity. When identity stabilizes, projection becomes coherent. So do not only descend into your basement to face darkness, ascend into your upper rooms and face your brilliance. Accept that you are capable of more than you have allowed. Accept that your presence matters. The world does not need a smaller version of you. It needs an integrated one. The question is not whether you have light. The question is whether you are willing to embody it without apology. Now I want you to see your evolution not as something abstract, but as structured movement through levels of awareness. Think of the chakra system as a symbolic map, a staircase of consciousness from survival to unity. Whether you interpret chakras literally as energy centers or metaphorically as psychological stages, the pattern reveals progression. You are not meant to remain fixed at one level. You are meant to ascend through integration. The first level concerns survival. Here your focus is safety, stability, food, shelter, physical existence. When this level dominates, fear of loss governs perception. You react strongly to threat. You prioritize security over growth. There is nothing wrong with this stage. It is foundational. Without basic stability, higher awareness cannot anchor. But if you remain trapped here, life becomes constant defense. Polarity at this level revolves around fear versus trust. The second level concerns desire and pleasure. This is where emotion, sexuality, and creative impulse awaken. Here you explore attraction, intimacy, enjoyment. When balanced, this level allows healthy expression and connection. When distorted, it can become addiction, obsession, or shame. Catalyst at this stage often appears as relationship conflict or emotional turbulence. The lesson is not repression. It is integration of desire with awareness. The third level concerns personal power. Identity solidifies. You assert will, ambition, boundaries. This is the stage of discipline, achievement, and self-definition. It is also where control issues arise. If power is suppressed, you feel weak and resentful. If power is exaggerated, you become domineering. Polarity sharpens here because choice of orientation becomes conscious. Do you use power to serve connection or to reinforce separation? Mastery of this level requires balanced confidence. The fourth level concerns the heart. Here awareness expands beyond personal ambition into empathy and compassion. You begin to recognize interconnectedness emotionally. Forgiveness becomes possible. Service to others becomes natural rather than forced. If this level is blocked, you remain guarded. If it is open but ungrounded, you may overextend yourself and neglect boundaries. Integration requires strength combined with softness. The fifth level concerns expression and truth. This is where you speak authentically. You communicate your inner state clearly. When this level functions well, you align speech with integrity. When it is distorted, you may lie to protect ego or silence yourself to avoid conflict. Catalyst here appears as misunderstandings and tension around communication. Growth involves aligning voice with authentic identity. The sixth level concerns perception and insight. Here, intuition sharpens. You see patterns beyond surface events. You recognize projection, shadow, and inner dynamics. Illusion begins to thin. If this level is imbalanced, you may become lost in fantasy or detached from practical reality. Integration requires clarity grounded in humility. Insight without grounding leads to confusion. Grounding without insight leads to rigidity. The seventh level concerns unity. Here, identity expands beyond personal narrative into awareness of oneness. You feel connected to something larger than yourself. Polarity at this level resolves into synthesis. Yet even this stage must remain integrated with lower levels. Spiritual awareness without survival, stability, or emotional health creates imbalance. Ascension does not mean abandoning the base. It means harmonizing all levels. I want you to understand that these levels are not separate compartments. They are layers within you. When you experience fear around money, the first level activates. When you feel jealousy in relationship, the second level stirs. When you strive for achievement, the third level energizes. When you forgive someone who hurt you, the fourth level opens. Evolution means moving energy upward while maintaining stability below. Blockage at any level creates distortion. Suppressed survival fear can manifest as chronic anxiety. Repressed desire can become addiction. Denied personal power can become passive aggression. Closed heart can become isolation. Silenced voice can become resentment. Ignored intuition can become confusion. The staircase is meant to be climbed consciously, not skipped. Polarity interacts with this system. If you orient toward unity, energy gradually rises from survival through power into compassion and clarity. If you orient toward separation, energy concentrates at lower levels, focusing on control and dominance. Neither path ignores the base. The difference lies in direction of integration. You may notice that life repeatedly challenges the same level until balance is achieved. Financial instability tests survival trust. Relationship conflict tests emotional maturity. Workplace competition tests power orientation. Communication breakdown tests expression. Spiritual doubt tests insight. Catalyst appears where growth is needed. Ascension is not escape from the body. It is embodiment of awareness at every level. When survival is stable, desire is integrated, power is balanced, heart is open, voice is authentic, perception is clear, and unity is felt. Coherence strengthens dramatically. Your polarity becomes stable because all layers align with chosen direction. Do not attempt to bypass stages. Spiritual language without psychological integration creates illusion. True evolution requires descending into lower levels to heal and then ascending with awareness. Each chakra is a step, not a destination. You are not climbing away from humanity. You are refining it. Each level mastered adds stability to the next. The staircase exists within you. Movement is gradual but consistent when you process catalyst consciously. The question is not which level sounds highest. The question is where your energy is currently concentrated and how you will integrate it upward with awareness. Now I want you to understand healing not as something mystical and distant, but as the deliberate restoration of coherence within your field of consciousness. Healing is not magic imposed from outside. It is alignment. When distortion is reduced, energy flows naturally. When energy flows naturally, clarity returns. When clarity returns, identity stabilizes. Healing is the technique of light remembering itself through you. Every wound you carry is stored as pattern. It is not only memory in your mind, it is tension in your body, contraction in your nervous system, expectation in your perception. If you were rejected, you may unconsciously expect rejection again. If you were betrayed, you may anticipate betrayal. That anticipation shapes interpretation. Interpretation shapes reaction. Reaction reinforces the original wound. Healing interrupts this loop. The first technique of light is awareness. You cannot heal what you refuse to see. When discomfort arises, instead of distracting yourself, sit with it. Feel where it resides in your body. Observe the narrative attached to it. Do not justify it and do not condemn it. Simply witness it. Light is attention without judgment. When you observe a pattern clearly, it begins to loosen. What is unconscious controls you. What is conscious can be transformed. The second technique is acceptance. Acceptance does not mean approval of harm. It means acknowledgement of what is present. Resistance tightens distortion. When you say this should not have happened, this feeling is wrong, this memory is unacceptable, you create internal conflict. Acceptance relaxes the contraction. It allows energy to move. You cannot rewrite the past, but you can alter your relationship to it. When you accept that pain occurred without defining yourself by it, identity shifts. The third technique is reframing. Every wound carries interpretation. You may have interpreted rejection as proof of unworthiness, but that interpretation was formed from limited perspective. As awareness expands, you can reinterpret events. Perhaps rejection redirected you. Perhaps betrayal revealed misalignment. Reframing does not deny pain. It assigns new meaning. Meaning changes vibration. Vibration changes experience. The fourth technique is integration of emotion. Many people attempt to heal by suppressing feeling. They say they are over it while tension remains. True healing requires allowing emotion to move through the body without attachment to story. Anger felt consciously becomes clarity. Grief felt consciously becomes depth. Fear felt consciously becomes caution without paralysis. When emotion is allowed rather than resisted, it completes its cycle. The fifth technique is forgiveness. Forgiveness is often misunderstood as excusing behavior. In reality, it is the release of energetic entanglement. When you hold resentment, you bind your field to the event. You replay it internally, reinforcing distortion. Forgiveness cuts that loop. It frees you. It does not erase boundaries. It restores coherence. Healing also involves responsibility, not blame, but ownership of your current state. Even if you did not cause the original wound, you are responsible for how long you carry it unconsciously. Responsibility returns power to you. It shifts you from victim to participant in your evolution. There is also the technique of embodiment. Breath, posture, movement all influence vibration. When you breathe deeply and steadily, your nervous system shifts from contraction to openness. When you stand upright, confidence signals strengthen. The body is not separate from consciousness. Physical alignment supports energetic alignment. Light flows more freely through relaxed structure. Healing is gradual. Layers unfold over time. You may believe you have resolved an issue, then encounter catalyst that reveals deeper residue. This is not failure. It is refinement. Each layer processed increases coherence. Each contraction released increases polarity, stability. I want you to see healing as disciplined practice. It is not passive waiting for pain to fade. It is active engagement with distortion. It is choosing to shine attention into shadow rather than avoiding it. The more consistently you practice awareness, acceptance, reframing, integration, forgiveness, and embodiment, the more stable your field becomes. As coherence increases, projection changes. You no longer interpret neutral events as threats. You no longer overreact to minor catalyst. Relationships shift because your responses shift. Healing transforms not only inner feeling but outer experience, because perception filters reality. Remember that light is intelligent. When you remove distortion, light organizes naturally. You do not force healing. You allow it by removing resistance. Just as water flows when blockage is cleared, energy flows when contraction is released. You are not broken. You are patterned. Healing is repatterning. It is the technique of returning to alignment with your deeper nature. Each time you process pain consciously, you strengthen your orientation. Each time you refuse, distortion accumulates. So when discomfort arises, see it as invitation, not to dwell in suffering, but to apply light deliberately. Healing is not weakness. It is mastery. It is the art of restoring coherence so that your polarity can express clearly without fragmentation. The question is not whether wounds exist. The question is whether you will illuminate them or continue navigating in partial darkness. Now I want you to understand harvest not as judgment, not as reward or punishment, but as resonance. Harvest is the natural consequence of sustained polarity. It is the moment when the orientation you have strengthened becomes stable enough to move you into a new field of experience. Nothing external decides this for you. There is no authority weighing your worth. There is only frequency aligning with compatible frequency. Imagine a magnet placed near iron filings. The filings do not debate whether to move. They respond automatically to the magnetic field. In the same way, when your consciousness reaches coherent alignment, you are drawn toward environments that match it. Harvest is not an event imposed upon you. It is a transition that occurs when vibration stabilizes beyond a certain threshold. It is graduation through resonance. Throughout your life, you have been shaping your field through daily choices. Every reaction, every intention, every integration of shadow, every act of compassion or control has strengthened a direction. Harvest measures not isolated moments but dominant pattern. If more than half of your orientation consistently leans toward unity, empathy, and conscious responsibility, that coherence becomes self-sustaining. If your orientation leans overwhelmingly toward separation and disciplined consolidation of power, that too becomes coherent. In either case, coherence produces movement. I want you to see the elegance of this mechanism. There is no need for external judgment because you naturally gravitate toward what feels familiar. If your vibration is grounded in compassion and expansion, environments rooted in cooperation will feel natural. If your vibration is grounded in control and hierarchy, environments structured around dominance will feel aligned. Harvest is simply the sorting of resonance. This process does not occur only at physical death. It occurs continuously in smaller cycles. When you shift identity significantly, your relationships change, your opportunities change, your interests change. You may notice that certain people drift away while others appear. That is micro-harvest. Your frequency adjusted and alignment reorganized. The larger harvest follows the same principle at greater scale. Many fear harvest because they imagine condemnation. But fear arises from misunderstanding. Harvest does not punish you for imperfection. It reflects your orientation. If you are lukewarm, if you oscillate without clarity, the sorting is delayed. You remain in cycles that repeat lessons until coherence forms, not because you are unworthy, but because resonance requires stability. Think of school. Graduation is not based on one perfect answer. It is based on accumulated learning. When you consistently demonstrate understanding, you move to the next level. If you have not yet integrated the lessons, you remain until you do. Harvest functions similarly. It recognizes sustained pattern, not temporary performance. There is also compassion embedded in this system. If your orientation toward unity is sincere but imperfect, you are not excluded. 51% is sufficient because it demonstrates direction. The universe values intention expressed consistently over flawless execution. Growth is incremental. What matters is that your heart leans toward expansion more often than contraction. At the same time, harvest reveals the seriousness of choice. If you repeatedly choose separation, manipulation, and domination with disciplined commitment, that too crystallizes. You move into contexts where such orientation can continue refining itself. Harvest does not argue. It aligns. I want you to consider how this changes your relationship to daily life. Every small act contributes to long-term resonance. There is no need for anxiety about a final evaluation. Instead, there is responsibility for current alignment. You are already participating in harvest through your present state. Harvest also dissolves victimhood. You are not assigned randomly to experience. You are drawn by compatibility. This does not blame you for every event. It recognizes that sustained vibration shapes trajectory. When you understand this, you stop waiting for external rescue and begin refining internal coherence. The idea of graduation implies continuation. Evolution does not end. It deepens. Harvest marks readiness for expanded complexity. If you align with unity, Awareness broadens into more refined cooperation. If you align with separation, will intensifies in more structured environments. Each path continues exploring the infinite from different angles. Do not interpret harvest as distant apocalypse. See it as ongoing process. Each time you integrate catalyst, you strengthen readiness. Each time you resolve shadow, you increase coherence. Each time you choose love over fear consistently, you approach threshold. It is gradual but inevitable when direction stabilizes. So the essential question becomes simple. What frequency are you cultivating now? Because harvest is not future speculation, it is present accumulation. The field you are building today determines the resonance you will inhabit tomorrow. There is no external judge. There is only alignment. And alignment responds faithfully to sustained choice. Now I want you to stand still for a moment and feel the weight of everything we have explored. Intelligent infinity as your source, light as the substance of reality, the illusion of solidity, the veil of forgetting, the experiment of separation, suffering as catalyst, others as mirrors, the projector within you, the law of polarity, the danger of lukewarm drift, service to others and service to self, the thresholds of orientation, darkness as opposition, catalyst as refinement, shadow and golden shadow, the staircase of awareness, healing as coherence, harvest as resonance. None of this is abstract philosophy. It is a map of choice. You are not here by accident. You are not a random organism in a meaningless universe. You are consciousness exploring itself through limitation. You are light experiencing contrast. And within this contrast, you are given one power that defines your trajectory. The power to choose orientation, not once, not dramatically, but repeatedly. Every morning you wake up within the illusion of separation. You feel your body. You see other faces. You encounter catalyst. And in those encounters you decide who you are becoming. You decide whether fear directs you or awareness guides you. You decide whether you contract into self-protection or expand into responsibility. You decide whether you remain lukewarm or clarify direction. I am not asking you to become perfect. Perfection is not required. Coherence is, you will feel anger. You will feel doubt. You will face shadow. That does not disqualify you. What matters is your dominant return. Do you return to compassion after anger? Do you return to courage after fear? Do you return to clarity after confusion? Orientation is measured by where you land most often. You may believe that your life is shaped primarily by external events, but you have seen that events are catalyst. Your response shapes polarity. Polarity shapes resonance. Resonance shapes harvest. This chain operates quietly, continuously. Whether you are aware of it or not, you are building momentum. There is no cosmic judge waiting to condemn you. There is only the field responding to your frequency. If you cultivate unity, unity becomes your environment. If you cultivate separation, separation becomes your environment. If you cultivate indecision, repetition becomes your environment. The mechanism is neutral. It reflects. So I ask you directly, who are you choosing to be? Not in words spoken publicly, not in ideals admired privately, but in the next moment of irritation, in the next opportunity to speak truth, in the next impulse to judge, in the next chance to show courage. These are the crossroads. Do not underestimate the power of small decisions. Each one tilts the scale. Each one stabilizes identity. Identity crystallizes into vibration. Vibration determines trajectory. You cannot escape choice, because even avoidance is a choice. Even silence carries orientation. You may fear making the wrong choice. Understand that growth includes correction. If you choose contraction and feel its cost, awareness invites adjustment. If you drift into lukewarm stagnation and feel emptiness, that emptiness is catalyst. The system is merciful because it allows recalibration. What matters is sincerity of direction. You are not required to convince anyone else of your orientation. You are required to embody it. Service to others begins with how you treat yourself and extends into how you treat the world. Service to self requires discipline of intention. Lukewarm requires no effort. And that is why it is dangerous. Look honestly at your patterns. Where have you been reactive? Where have you hidden your light? Where have you resisted healing? Where have you avoided responsibility? Do not judge yourself harshly. Observe clearly. Clarity is power. Once you see pattern, you can shift it. This life is not endless drift. It is focused opportunity. The veil makes it feel uncertain so that your choice carries weight. Darkness tests your alignment so that your light becomes deliberate. Catalyst presses against you so that your identity strengthens. Harvest awaits coherence. In the end, there is no external command forcing your evolution. There is only invitation. Invitation to rise above fear. Invitation to integrate shadow. Invitation to claim your brilliance. Invitation to align daily actions with chosen direction. You are light within light. You are consciousness within infinity. The illusion of separation makes this moment feel small. But it is not small. It is decisive. Every day you either reinforce contraction or expansion. Every day you either clarify polarity or dilute it. So do not drift. Do not wait for perfect circumstances. Do not postpone your alignment until some future version of yourself appears. That future version is built from your present decisions. Choose awareness over impulse. Choose integrity over convenience. Choose courage over comfort. Choose expansion over fear. Or choose separation consciously if that is your path. But do not remain lukewarm, because the universe responds not to intention spoken once, but to direction sustained. And direction begins now.